featuring commentary and interviews with figures on the dissident right and advocates for Western civilization and white well-being. Discussing art, music, history, culture, philosophy, and spirituality. Join us each week to explore the cultural frontier of white identity politics. For more content and products, visit AmericanZarathustra.com. Remember, the higher we soar, the smaller we appear to those who cannot fly. Welcome again to another episode of American Zarathustra. I'm extremely happy to introduce you to my guest from Melbourne, Australia, Synthicide. How are you today, sir?
G'day, Donald. Thanks for having me. Hello to all your kids.
Fantastic. So I do want to let our audience know there is a tiny delay between the United States and Australia, so just bear with us a little bit. So I love your music, Synthicide. I would like to kind of help out our audience, though. There might be a lot of people that are not really familiar with techno, electronica, electric dance music. If you could kind of describe your music a bit for us before we get into the show.
Okay, well, under the Synthicide banner, it started out as just, it's mostly, you know, I'm sure it's easy for people to hear that it's very influenced by the 1980s soundtracks or advertising music, library music, as they sometimes call it. Not to mention all the, you know, typical synth pop sort of era. And it's something that it's really come full circle. I'd like that kind of music as a kid growing up through the 80s.
Nice.
Then into the 90s, things went more into the techno sort of era.
Right.
That's when I started amassing, electronic instruments and equipment. And then I eventually sort of came full circle and just lost interest in rave music and techno and went back to, I guess, my roots are really sort of coming from a horror and science fiction soundtrack background.
Nice, very nice. Which I think is pretty common in that kind of retro futuristic, sort of like synthwave, could we say, or vaporwave? Is that, you know?
Yeah, I definitely sprung out of the online synthwave scene pretty much from the get-go. Once it sort of became an online phenomenon, it grew and grew, and then certain sort of key films just brought more people into it, like, you know, from Kung Fury, that sort of half an hour short comedy.
That's great, an amazing short. People should look that up. Kung Fury.
Drive, of course. Drive was the first film to really sort of give a big shout out to the retro futurist sort of artists. And then, of course, Stranger Things, like literally overnight, thousands of more producers just flooded into the scene and kind of a little bit oversaturated. But, you know, I'm still doing it, and I move really slowly, and I kind of took a little bit too long to get product out. But, so I've kind of really come out of the third wave of synthwave, I suppose, because I just took my sweet ass to...
So what do you think it is about synthwave and this genre that's kind of like 80s retro synthetic dance music? How did that happen? I mean, what is it about that flavor that is so popular? Why did people kind of jump on board with that? What would you say?
I think that the commonality is, you've got, I suppose you kind of have to split it down into almost not two audiences, but for obviously for people that lived through the 80s and already knew that kind of music, it had that those memories and that feeling is pulling you back into an era that just seemed.
Yeah, I always think of the Terminator. Like for some reason, I just always see the Terminator in my mind when I kind of hear these tracks. This kind of busted up cars with a synthetic robot chasing after you with a shotgun. It's got that kind of action flavor to it.
Yeah, I definitely sort of, because I sort of, like I said before, because I liked that sort of horror sci-fi action element, gravitate that post-apocalyptic sort of feel. But having said that, I do like the other side, the brighter, summery kind of dreamwave side of it, which has a very melancholic feel to it, and I think it's making you dream of a time that you wish you could either go back to, or for some of those that are younger, never even had.
I think you're touching on a really, really key point here, because I've read or heard the idea that the 80s, from like a sort of a right-wing white identity politics view, is considered kind of a golden age almost, the Reagan era. And it was sort of, before the 90s and before kind of hip hop and degenerate culture on TV, et cetera, started to kind of take over American culture and I guess, Western culture in some way. But that it kind of like harkens back to that. Would you agree with that?
Massively. That is that is incredibly true. That's because I'm old enough too. I can actually remember the change in culture from going after the early 90s, like as far as the kind of music that MTV started pushing, the change, even like just rock music. It went from the sort of, like it was already pretty hedonistic in the 80s and all that, but then you go into the 90s with the alternative sort of scene. You knew exactly what they were pushing onto people, and the rise of the snag, like the sensitive new age guy, that kind of thing, and then obviously the drug culture that came with all that, and just absolute sort of pushing that it's the depression, the drugs,
sure, the negativity, right? See, I think this is a really, really important other topic, kind of a meta topic in the alt-right or the dissonant right, is that you have different generations, right, that are in this movement, and some are young and middle-aged and older, and it's this kind of music that kind of brings us together in some way, I feel, and I think that's magical. I think that's really, really cool. So I feel like you actually have a really important role in the movement in that regard. But here's the thing is that, say guys in their 20s, for example, or their 30s, maybe even, that's all a kind of a bygone era. That's something that they look at and they kind of laugh at how cheesy the movies were in the 80s or something. Whereas we were there and we saw the transformation, and there's this kind of a horror inside our hearts to see, wow, it was not like this. What is normal now was not normal. And, from our perspective, it's so much more poignant, I guess. We really feel it in a very immediate way. Like we can actually see the time lapse of our civilization decaying. It's a terrible feeling, So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, it's you see it, and with a lot of younger people, you see it in a lot of the memes and all that kind of dreaming of a time that I never had, or I can't remember that terminology, but you see a lot. And I noticed with a lot of, especially after, and look, I was doing this kind of music too, but in the late 2000s or early 10s, obviously dubstep was still quite big in an underground way,
right.
And I think after that reached its peak. A lot of people that had got into electronic dance production initially were drawn to that, and it's very taxing on sound design. Like it's a very sound design heavy. You have to really know what you're doing and deep dive to into the tools that you have and the software. With the younger guys, I think they just, when they first sort of heard those first waves of the neo 80s sort of soundtrack style, it was a massive breath of fresh air.
Cool.
That's perspective, obviously, and from mine, it's just sort of it's full circle for me, but for them it's completely new. So
I get you. I get you. You know, there's another aspect to like dubstep and that kind of music. There was a heavy kind of a reggae gangster culture that
yeah,
was in that. You probably recall that. And you know, I think when you're young and you know you're trying to sort of be a man and look cool and be on the scene and all that stuff, that was kind of cool. You're just posturing, but you know, you look back at it and this all this kind of like, you know, murder culture that literally it is. You think like, what was I doing? You know, why was I into that? That's the music itself is freaking sweet. It's just so cool. It's very cool to dance to and enjoyable to listen to. But I always thought, you know, I really wish they could pull out all that negative gangster stuff. It's just it really ghettoizes this music, and it also racializes it as like a almost like a black music, even though my understanding is it comes from England. You know, I don't know what.
oh, exactly. Yeah, it's the same thing that put me off metal in the 90s. Like, you know, from I mean, I'm talking obviously post Korn and Limp Bizkit, when it became this wigger thing. Like, it just, I totally distanced myself from heavy metal for years because of
It's interesting. So, like, I know that you know you've got you've got a few different things going on. We spoke earlier before the show about a new project or a new band that you're with. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Oh, you're referring to Strange Nights.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, that actually began. Well, actually, Synthicide uh, was initially meant to be a kind of, well, not a band, but like a duo kind of thing. But and that's what sort of Strange Nights has turned into. The singer I work with, he is a DJ, well, has been a DJ in Melbourne, and runs a club that predominantly plays music from the new romantic and new wave era, mostly.
Okay.
Or new music influenced by that. And he so we came together, obviously, over a love for all that early 80s English music, you know, from Visage to Depeche Mode to Human League, you know, on and on and on. Well, he has a very sort of, it's the typical kind of 80s synth pop duo where you've got me as the producer guy behind the scenes, and he is the soulful singer. He vocally, he learnt to sing literally by singing along to Culture Club records. And I've got to say that Boy George is probably one of his biggest influences. But and Steve Strange from Visage, and so that's where we were going with that. That's been a really long, ongoing project. But for anyone that did grow up through the 80s, that was into that kind of thing, I think this album is on the verge of being released probably in the next sort of, I don't know, 2 months. So anyone that grew up with that era, I think will love it. Any Depeche Mode fans, you know, Visage, Human League, I think will probably really dig it.
I know that Richard Spencer is a massive Depeche Mode fan, so you're going to have to reach out to him and you know, get him plugged in with that. I did see there was like some kind of a EP or something dedicated to that style of music on your Bandcamp as well. But that brings me to the question. You know, I'm a musician, of course, right? So, have you learned any instruments, or what? How does it work? How do you make synthetic music?
Oh, actually, yeah. Well, yeah. I started out playing in bands. I mean, I was first drums, then I moved on to guitar, bass, and eventually, you know, vocals and keyboards. But I think, even though I'd already sort of been into the electronic music from a younger age, like as I got into my teens and early 20s, you know, I got more into the harder edged sort of, you know, hard rock metal, you know, glam metal, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
But then eventually, when rave hit, I guess I was at the right age. Really, really hard, heavy edged techno, and I thought, oh, I think I want to do that. So I started buying, you know, a lot of the cheaper small machines to do that kind of one-man techno kind of thing. And eventually that just evolved into, you know, finding a way to record, you know, either getting a sampler. This is obviously pre-software. Looking at to, you know, 4-track or 8-track cassette. I was with these guys for years that said, I am never, ever going to record onto a computer.
So you were analog, I guess, right? Is that it?
Yeah, believe me, I was so anti-computer for some reason. I didn't actually start doing it until probably 2010. Um,
Wow.
so I had to obviously re-record everything that I'd done prior to that.
Wow.
And but then by that stage, I'd moved on to drum and bass, and then the neo 80s thing sort of hit me, and I got more interested in that in the original synthesizer sound. So
well,
as far as the production, I mean, it was just a matter of learning, a digital audio workstation. I got Ableton, just literally just because I read an interview with a guy I really admired, Jack Dangers from Meat Beat Manifesto. Love that. And he talked about some new program called Ableton. I'm like, okay, well, he's into it. I'll check it out. So
yeah, I've purchased it. I haven't had time to learn it though. It seems pretty complex. On a scale of 1 to 10, how complex would you say Ableton Live is?
I don't think.
I suppose you're more used to it though than the average, like a newbie like me.
Well, there is that, but I mean, even if you bought Pro Tools or Logic, you'd still have the same learning curve. And I'm a slow learner with that kind of thing anyway, so it took me a while. But it's just with Ableton, it's rather than, I mean, yeah, you can just use it for recording, but it does have another function where you can use it as DJing or just playing loops on the fly or using it as an instrument, really.
So that kind of goes back to my original question. I'm trying to see how being a musician translates into making synthetic music per se, right? Do you want to expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, okay. As to actual live instruments going into electronic?
Yeah, because I know that there's a lot of canned beats and riffs and keyboard parts and whatnot that you can just kind of collage together. It's sort of, I guess, the poor man's version of techno music. You kind of slap it together. But I don't know. I wanted to hear a little bit more about how do you approach your musical process. I do want to play some music though, because I feel like let's let our listeners enjoy some of your music before we get too nerdy on the technical side of that stuff. How does that sound?
That's a good idea. I'll have a think about it while it's playing.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to play "Tomorrow Belongs to Us." Now this is featuring No White Guilt, Jason Kuhn. No White Guilt on YouTube is extraordinary. It's one of the central pillars of our movement of white well-being. And if you're not familiar with No White Guilt on YouTube, you must get on there immediately. Well, after my show, of course. But so you're going to have a little taste of that right now. So this is Synthicide, Tomorrow Belongs to Us.
They just revealed that tomorrow is ours. Today is not ours, but tomorrow is. Now is the time to redouble our efforts to get to these people with this doctrine of white well-being. Not another campaign slogan, not another pathetic ideology, or another new flag. Not another nothing that loses again and again. This curative contagion for white well-being. This is what the soil is rich for. This is what will turn our people to our cause, so that we can recapture our destiny. It is not black pills. It is white pills. It is a positivity. It is a rising dawn in the West. And I now take up the sword of this continent, and I stride with purpose into that shining light of that Western sunrise, into a soil that grows richer by the minute. They know that tomorrow belongs to us.
Brilliant. That is sick. I loved it, man. I didn't want it to stop. Oh.
Yeah, that was one. I mean, I initially reached out to an Australian guy, Blair Cottrell, to try and get some voice sort of over work done. But I'd been listening to Jason and Jared's show for quite a while that I thought it's just the way that they can talk just resonates with me so much that I thought, no, I've got to have one of them on a track. And I just reached out to him, and he's like, yeah, I think he had the impression that it was just going to be some little hokey sort of track that sounded like garbage. But I thought, no, I'm going to make this sound as best as I possibly can.
The second half of the song, I was jamming out here. I was just really getting down with that. I mean, his voice and what he says and the way that he says it really, really go good with your music and kind of belong with some kind of a musical background, I would almost say. It's just so powerful, so inspiring. You know as well as I do, he's like a giant among us. So we're just so proud to be in his company. And framing his ideas and his words in your music is perfect. I just think it's a really great combination. I want to applaud you.
Thank you. Yeah, I hope to do a bit more of that. It's I wanted to do the same with Jared George too, with one of his poems, a bit or something on the track. But I'm going to keep giving that kind of thing a bit more of a crack.
Nice. Now it's funny because of course I listened to the after party. Actually, I did the graphics for the after party. Have you ever seen the kind of the beer, the pints, with the whatever? Anyway, that you can take a look at that later. But in the background, Jared Jordan has like a bass guitar on leaning against the wall, and I keep wondering, hey, what's going on here, buddy? Let's we should do some music together or something. But
it's funny. He is a muso. I've heard him say it a few times on shows, and I keep forgetting to ask. Okay, where's he?
Yeah. So actually, just tossing it out there, of course, I would love to work with you as well. I've got to kind of wrap my head around Ableton and how to record stuff and send you tracks and whatnot. But I think we obviously will do that offline. I figure we've just whet the appetites of our audience with your awesome music. So why don't we play another track here? What do you say?
All
right. We've got one called New Dark Ages. Can you kind of set this up a little bit before I play it?
Yeah, that's actually got. You'll hear a few vocal samples on that.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's kind of fairly self-explanatory. There's a bit of a sample from Glenn Beck at the start, and at the end you'll hear a bit of a Trump thing. But it was released on the day of the American election, that particular EP. So I think it was just right up. It's, to be honest, when I wrote it, I thought that it was going to be a Hillary Clinton landslide, and it wasn't to be. But I guess it's it's pretty post-apocalyptic, and it's very as far as soundtrack wise, it's very. Are you familiar with Cannon films, like of the 80s? It's very Cannon-esque.
Yes, actually,
the areas and stuff.
I wanted to comment. The last tune we played did actually have almost like a horror vibe to it, and it plugs right in with what you were saying about that kind of 80s action horror films, or the future, like the ones that we were discussing a little while ago. So I'm really anxious to hear this one here. Okay, so I'm going to play this. It's called New Dark Age. This is on soundcloud.com/Synthicide Music. So you can also go look that up. New Dark Ages by Synthicide.
The international order we seek is one that can resolve the challenges of our time.
They like the idea of a global government that sort of micromanages everybody.
Good evening, everybody. President Obama and British Prime Minister Gordon today called for a new world order to tackle our global economic crisis.
There is a global meltdown coming. It is a global depression. And one world currency and one world financial system is the end game.
Federal Reserve, even the EPA are sending billions of dollars overseas, and many economic and political decisions made in the United States just don't benefit us. They benefit a would-be one world government.
Who is our government serving? Us or global elites?
When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order.
Americanism, not globalism. Brilliant, brilliant. Loving it. This is the stuff right here. I do remember hearing that some time ago, and I honestly can't remember when. Oh, hold on a second here. Whoa, man. Space age music all around us. It's amazing. It's attacking us. Okay, so I've got that under control. But yeah, it's wild, thinking back to 2016. My God, it's 2020. This is the new election year. Shit is heavy right now in America. I mean, it's at a boiling point for sure. Things are very, very real. I could go into my own thoughts on that, but I did actually want to get more of your perspective, like the Australian perspective, talking through what's unique about say white identity politics in Australia or dissident politics in Australia, the cause, the struggle. What's unique about that experience in Australia? I kind of don't feel that. Well, in my world anyway, I don't really feel like I get enough information about that. I'm mostly connected more with news from Europe and maybe a little bit from Canada. Do you think you can kind of go into that a bit for us?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair to say that. I mean, obviously, we were originally an English colony, so most of our influence came from England, and then it sort of at some point after World War II, it went more to the American side. So now it's a bit of a mix of both, politically speaking. So we've had movements, Republican movements in the past that have wanted to change Australia from the constitutional monarchy to a republic. We even had a referendum. Initially, I was dead set against the idea just because I had this viewpoint. I'm not going to say anti-American, but I looked at America and thought what I thought a republic represented was chaos. So I initially wasn't for that idea. But every system has its pros and cons. I've been anti-monarchy. I've been pro-monarchy. That's just now I'm just confused.
Yeah, it's funny too because when we use terms like American and English and there's such broad strokes where American people, American culture, American media, American history, American and then in politics itself, that's kind of a many-layered onion, where there's all these levels of corruption and the ideals and the system. I believe are have a good will behind them, but the people running the system don't in many cases. So don't worry about like whatever you say. You just say what you feel. Share your thoughts on that. But I guess I'm more interested in your personal experience and your personal view of white identity politics in Australia.
Okay. Well, I grew up pretty much a good little colorblind person. I guess most Australians sort of have been to an extent because prior to the Vietnam War, we were pretty much. I mean, people like to say that we were pretty much an ethno-state, I suppose to an extent. Definitely, obviously, and still are a white majority, but like with the states, forecast is that's to change in the next coming decades, but who knows? So, as we all see, every time there's a massive war, it just seems to change the demographics of the Western world, and that happened after Vietnam for us, and that's when they all started coming here, fleeing, the horrificity of the war. So, growing up in the suburbs, I was living sort of next to one of the areas where a lot of the Vietnamese first congregated. And at my high school, there wasn't a lot of them, but I noticed all of a sudden that there was Asian people in my class.
Right.
Maybe, and I think in the whole of the school, 2 Africans. That was really unusual, actually. There's always been more Indians here than Africans. Growing up, I didn't. It's sort of a cliche to say, maybe, but I really didn't have any consciousness of race whatsoever. I never really sort of realised I was white until, I was told otherwise, that it was, shitful, or whatever. But as far as leaning politically, I was never really aware of, or never adhered to any left wing or right wing ideology. But there's been the odd political party that has kind of amped the pro-European stance, and one of the earliest ones that got to me was the League of Rights. And you might recall in the States, William Cooper, the infamous author that was gunned down by police, I believe, after 9/11. He sort of gave rise to this sort of, the globalist ideology, or New World Order, as they were calling it back then.
Yeah, right.
The League of Rights is kind of in that ballpark, and they were very pro-monarchy, and a party broke away from them called the Citizens. The CEC, the Citizens Electoral Council of Australia, who are now just called the Citizens. I actually became a member of that group in the last sort of decade. They don't, whilst they sort of say they don't play identity politics, on the surface, that's for sure. But if you look underneath, there's very pro-European traits as far as looking back on our history. But this is definitely from a very anti-monarchist stance.
Interesting.
They're more focused on. I don't want to say they're just an economics party now, but they've been focused more on the banking crisis, particularly over the last decade.
Okay.
And that's kind of what pulled me back into politics. I tried to switch off during the Bush and Obama years, but the banking thing just sucked me straight back in. And nothing's changed, nothing's been done, and it's just, we look at who runs Wall Street, and I think that's where identity eventually got to me at that point in time, and I've sort of been stuck in that loop.
I see. Yeah, that's kind of where I was. That's a good jump off point for me, because I was going to ask you about how your music connects to white identity, and I mean, some of it's obvious, obviously, with the songs we've been playing. What would you say is kind of the spirit or the message that you really want to get across with your music?
I know a lot of my music is quite post-apocalyptic in feel. So I suppose that's. I do get very black-pilled.
Okay.
But extremely. That's just,
it's hard not to. I get that. And honestly, I have to say, I mean, this might just be my perspective, but I feel like that, if you want to call it post-apocalyptic aesthetic in like Fash Wave and other musics, in a way, it's like a warning. It's meant in some sense, or at least it makes you feel an urgency, a feeling that something is very wrong here. We need to understand what it is and do something about it. Am I right?
Oh, yeah, that's spot on. And I guess I juxtapose that with some of my other releases at the complete polar opposite. So, I've got an EP that's about space exploration and the great things, or the things that humanity has achieved, or all the more dreamy, summary stuff. So, I'm not just about down music, but
you're not a doomer. You're not a doomer. Doom and gloom. I'm sorry to cut you off. When we get to your Bandcamp, maybe you can point out to me, what the songs are on that. What would you call that genre that you're doing?
It's still under the synthwave umbrella, but it's more I suppose I'd call it I don't know, dreamwave or beach wave.
Excellent. I look forward to checking that out. let's move on to another track that you wanted in this set list here. Cultural oncology intro. That's what I have. Can you explain that a little bit? That's a cultural
Yeah,
oncology. Go ahead.
I guess I can plug in, give a plug to my good friend, Dr. Richard T. Pundercott. He got booted from Twitter, but he has a YouTube channel called The Cultural Oncologist.
Okay.
It's really just more of a gathering of all the clown world news, plus
I've come across it. Yeah.
Yeah, a bit of a political sort of. Um,
So it's a plug for his YouTube channel. Would you say Cultural Oncology? Is that correct?
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I did an intro and an outro track, but the one that you're playing hasn't actually been used. So this is an area. The sound of this I'm going to sort of develop a bit further. You'll notice a bit more distortion in the background, and
Nice.
anyway.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, let's without further ado, Cultural Oncology by Synthicide. Very nice, very nice. This was kind of a short song, but it has a really great kind of hook, and I got to say something about the marching boots, whatever I don't know what that's called per se, but like the sound of it is just super inspiring. It's very powerful, and it makes me think about Fash Wave. So, are there any Fash Wave artists that you listen to, or particular songs that you might be inspired by?
Yeah, I mean, of course, we all know Zirius.
Yes.
On top of that, there's Vanguard. Oh, geez, who else?
It's always when you're asked to say those things that they slip your mind. There's some
I
kind
know
of
I made a SoundCloud playlist of them because there's amazingly SoundCloud is one of the platforms that hasn't banned all these artists. I mean, Bandcamp has.
Well, don't jinx it. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, I hear you.
But they're not. But yeah, they're still there. So.
That's wild. I guess I wonder why. I'm kind of curious. I mean, it's great, thank God, that they're not sort of like politically cucked, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, all right. Well, next song we're going to look at here is called "Strange Nights." Do you want to intro this a bit? What's this about?
Okay. Well, Strange Nights. This is my other band or duo. This song. Strange Nights, actually the name and the title track is it's pretty much a tribute to the New Romantic era and Steve Strange, who was from Visage. In case you didn't know, he passed away 3-4 years ago, maybe 5.
I think I caught the news.
Yeah, he pretty much not single-handedly, but spurred that movement, from its beginnings, along with Rusty Egan, who was kind of the behind-the-scenes man. Now, from the outside, from people that don't know, they just think it's a bunch of guys, poncing around in makeup and frilly shirts, and I indulge in that a lot back in the day.
I just got to jump in because everything that's cool in 10 years will be embarrassing. Whatever it is. I mean, to me, I was really shocked to see this whole synth wave and this kind of 80s wave, if you want to call it. I just sort of was like, that came out of left field, because I figured, like, whatever. I just didn't think people would think that was cool. But somehow they've made it cool. I mean, it's cooler than the 80s in its own way. It's almost like through like a cool lens, if you will. It would be really interesting to, go back to the future, little pun there or whatever, to see if people in that time would dig this music. That would be kind of neat,
It's funny that after sort of a decade or so, there's often that thing called cultural cringe, and I must admit that I even sort of, at some point stopped listening to the music I listened to back then, because I thought it was maybe a little cheesy. Mind you, only for maybe a year or two, but you give it to fresh ears, and it's as fresh to them as it was to me as a kid. So
there you go. I mean, there's those kind of funny videos where they have children listen to like Deep Purple and Led Zeppelin, and and say, "What do you think?" And these are little kids. They're not super little. They're maybe, I don't know, 10 years old or something, and they hear it for the first time, and they're kind of like, "Yeah, it's got a cool beat," and I think good art is timeless. That's just the bottom line. Now, granted, I mean, there's styles and scenes and cultures and subcultures, etc. But I think good music stands the test of time. I'll just say that.
And we don't have, MTV sort of, they don't play music anymore, so there is no influence in that sort of respect. And synthwave, earnestly began as a completely underground, hidden thing. And it's got to the point now where major artists, I can hear elements, on some major top 10 songs it's definitely taken some inspiration from the synthwave, from Nepson to what's his face?
I'll never forget what's his face.
Oh God, the Canadian singer. He's huge at the moment.
Well, maybe you'll think of his name, while we're playing the tune or whatever. That's okay. Like I said, sometimes the stuff doesn't pop in your head. But I wanted to make kind of a look at this for a second. Sometimes I tell my son, I say, you have to realize that whatever's underground now will be mainstream in a couple of years. Roughly 5 years. That's kind of how I figured it out, and people today don't really understand that guitar rock was kind of the dominant form of music, and the synthesizers were new technology. Daft Punk kind of comes to mind. That for some reason I'm just thinking that through. But anyway, for me, like, I loved Devo back in the day. Devo was weird and funny and anti-establishment in some kind of way. There was an aesthetic, an intention to it, and it was totally fresh. I mean, totally different. A bit stiff mechanically, and in terms of like the beats and the flow. It's computer how do I say it? Music made by computers, so therefore it's kind of stiff. The technology has obviously changed a lot, right? Since then. Yeah. But I think that's important for people to kind of see that it was the alternative in a kind of a guitar rock world of its time.
Yeah, and I think anyone that's into music like a bit more seriously will always go back in time to discover or rediscover things that they didn't grow up with. And like when I was in my teens, I went back and listened to stuff from the 60s. It's the same. Anyone that's really into music will always go back and discover things, which I still am now myself. So,
Sure, yeah, and I mean it's just such a huge pool of music. I've been treating myself to like Baroque guitar, and trying to like go even farther back just to try to get into that world. Anyone who's a musician, I guess we're in our own kind of category, but people who do really, really care about music and that music has a very important role in their life. Yeah, their mind is open. They don't kind of, how do I say, like there's a lot of people that they have a very narrow-minded view of music, and that this music represents me and it's my flag and I'm standing by it and I'm not going to listen to anything else. I think that's kind of silly. That's sort of a shame in a way. Why
I've
limit
done that.
yourself?
I mean,
Yeah.
I've been through pretty much every musical youth movement that you can think of.
So that almost could be a creative challenge for you for the future too, and maybe you can, I don't know, when the synth wave and the fash wave thing becomes tired, maybe draw into other time periods. I don't know how that would look or sound, but something to keep in mind, I suppose, moving forward. So let's listen to Strange Nights. I don't want to keep our poor listeners waiting any longer. That sound good? All right, Strange Nights by Synthicide. Very nice, very nice. That was Strange Nights by Synthicide. Beautiful stuff, man. What a different feeling, a different flavor from the last tune that we just listened to. The vocals are awesome. It's the whole production is just very professional. So it's good stuff, man. I like it.
Right. Well, that was an oh so exclusive. That like I literally just finished that yesterday. So
Oh, hot off the press. You heard it first here on American Zarathustra. Good stuff. Good stuff.
The singer hasn't even heard it yet. So
right now,
so there you go.
You've and have you recorded a lot with that vocalist?
Yeah. So I'm on the verge in the next month or two of finally releasing our debut album, and this has been in the works. I'm not exaggerating here, since 2013.
Wow.
So it's mainly, we hardly ever see each other. It's just been a studio project. Unfortunately, it's not to turn into a live thing. That was the original idea, but he's just not into performing live.
Yeah.
Just too much, like some people get like, I mean, it's nervous to perform in front of a crowd, but he gets extra nervous. So probably understand. I do too.
Oh yeah, we're musicians. We played shows, and I know what it feels like to be. I'll say after like so many years of playing shows, you still get nervous before you go on. There's just no way around it. I've come to figure out how to deal with that. I kind of take it as like an energy that I say, yeah, this is going to help me focus. And then I can so it's kind of turning lemons into lemonade type attitude, So, I'd have to say this seems like kind of a milestone in your career here. You're starting this amazing new project. It's got a whole new flavor to it. And, but I'm curious, like, where do you play it? Are there clubs, radio, how do you get this out there in the world?
Oh, okay. Well, initially for the synthwave project, it actually blew up here in Australia in the underground very early on. In fact, one of the first synthwave podcasts was Synthetics FM, and I found out that it was run by a guy who years ago we gigged together in our old bands. I couldn't believe when I found this out. It was just almost cosmic in a way. And,
yeah. I believe it.
Yeah, it's like circle. But anyway, that's finished now. But but since then, a few other podcasts have sprung up. It also inspired a guy to start the first synthwave nightclub.
Wow.
It's just about to have its 5th birthday. And yeah, I've done a few. Surprisingly, I've only done about 4 gigs under the synthwave umbrella. I think it's a lot of effort to do it as a one-man band, and also I think very boring for the audience. Because if I was going to really do this properly, I'd want to have a projector and get into the graphics part of it.
I see. Yeah.
Really media kind of thing. And you look at a lot of the bigger synthwave guys that are playing live now and doing big festivals, and they always end up getting extra band members like a live drummer or props, or you need backing strings, all that kind of stuff.
I guess
just watching a guy playing the keys, or it's like watching a DJ twiddle knobs. It's just
right. There's nothing to see, right? I get it.
You may as well just be pressing play, and you're going to get the same result.
Wow.
But I got definitely good responses from playing live, but because it was so new to me at the same time, I guess look, like we were talking about a minute ago, I've played thousands of gigs playing in rock bands or hardcore bands, punk bands, etc. But doing things on my own, I thought it'd just be as simple as stepping on stage again, but all of a sudden I got massively self-conscious, and the last gig I did was a major technical stuff up, and
ouch.
It ruined me. I don't know why, but I let it get to me so much, because
It's
I was about to
understandable.
perform in front of a full packed house as an EP launch,
Damn.
and everything turned to shit. And then
Oh, dude.
I let it.
I'm sorry to hear that. That sucks. I can't say I've been in a situation that bad, but that's it happens, man. I don't know. I mean, technical issues. People don't realize, especially like with this kind of music, it's all technical. If you're in a band and some guy for whatever reason, breaks a string, or I don't know, he loses his mic or something, the rest of the band can carry you, but when you're out there flying solo and whatever, there's a disconnect with the technology. God, what do you do? How did you get through that?
I think that's why most people, like in the synthwave thing, if they're going to play live, they're just DJing. But I wanted to at least play as much possibly live as I could. So I'd take the laptop to be the sequencer, and then anything that I couldn't play live, I'd sequence the bass parts and the drum parts. Would go on synthesizer, the drum parts, either from Ableton or to a drum machine, and I'd play the rest live.
Okay.
And it was pretty good setting it up. I had it flawlessly set up, but it was just an audio connection that stuffed everything up. And it almost blew the the sound system. And I don't know what happened. We don't know what happened, but for some reason, it just turned me off from playing live. So I'm just trying to focus on doing more studio work and going to sound.
Yeah, I don't blame you, man. I'm sorry that happened. I've actually started jamming with two local DJs. One is a young lady that also plays like ukulele and sings and stuff, and so that's a little more musical. But I've been experimenting with playing bass and guitar and doing vocals with a DJ. He's got tracks and he mixes and it's something I want to do more. I think it's just super cool. It's mostly house music, but there's just something to it. I don't know what to say. It sounds cool as hell. How and when that's all going to turn into a thing, who knows? Because I just don't have a lot of time on my hands. Have you ever worked with live musicians?
Oh yeah, I've been in quite a handful of bands.
Doing techno with them, I'm saying.
Oh, sorry, no.
But how? I mean, if you could imagine that, how would that work? Like, you've got a beat. It's obviously a machine, right? It's very, very technical. So it really pushes the musicians to lock in, with that beat.
Yeah. Are they playing completely acoustic instruments, or is there any electronics in there?
Well, I'll give you an example. So I have a buddy who he spins on he does a Facebook Live on Friday nights, and he'll get his turntables out and he'll spin some tunes, and then I'll turn my Facebook Live on. This is in my normie life. I'll have to figure out how to do this. Maybe we could do this or something, and I'll have my bass, and he's just mixing music, and I play along with the bass, to his music. Sorry? Yeah. So, I mean, it's jamming. It's not writing, right? I don't have lyrics and vocals and all that stuff worked out, but I just love the energy of techno music and electronica, and but I want to be able to bring my musical ability into it. So, I don't know, it's just, again, something to think about,
You may not have realised yet, but once you get to know and understand Ableton a bit more, and then you'll start jamming along, and it'll automatically start recording it as however many bars you want as a loop. Then obviously you go to the next, start playing along with whatever it is, the next synth lead or whatever it might be. That starts looping, and you build and build and build. And obviously the more the better you get it down. And a lot of people are doing this. I found a guy with a YouTube channel, and his whole channel is just about live loops, and it's really good ambient music.
I could totally do that. I could do that. Yeah.
Yeah. So you might figure that out eventually. And
for sure. We'll have to talk. I think we're going to have to talk about that offline and see if we can pull something together, or maybe if you can at least show me how to do that. But So we were chatting a little bit earlier about like milestones in your career. You know, you seems like you've gone through the entire range of music almost. Not the entire, but you know, you've done so many different things. I'm wondering,
Yeah.
you know, if you could maybe talk a little bit more about things that you're proud of, things you've accomplished.
Okay. Well, at least with the Synthicide thing, when my first and second EPs came out, apart from all the podcast support, we've got some FM stations over here like Kiss FM, that actually picked up some tracks and started playing them, which I was very surprised. I guess it's sort of like a larger community station, but same with community radio. I guess that's the same as you'd probably call it college radio in the States.
Right.
So I think there's a lot of support in those things. But then after, and I know a lot of people will say the same thing, after Trump was elected, all of a sudden I just, people sort of understood my views a bit more, and, that's when you started getting ostracized, and, I found myself getting pushed. I didn't change, but everyone else was suddenly getting all, uppity and hoity-toity about everything, and that's awesome. I pretty much haven't changed, but everyone else sort of has got a little bit more too sensitive.
It's annoying. I know, it's very annoying. That actually segues into my other question, which was, you're talking about like synthwave has really caught on as a scene in Melbourne and I don't know if other places in Australia. So I'm thinking if that's so, then I'm assuming that those people must also be aware of like white identity politics and culture and news. Is that true, or is it just a music scene to them?
No, as far as I can tell, it's just a music scene to them. They, the guy that runs, the only synthwave club in Melbourne, he's pretty much, it's probably safe to say he's a socialist lefty.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether we get along as friends anymore. It's just, he knows my views and doesn't like them. So there's that.
Yeah.
So as far as trying to integrate back into playing or getting support, I have to look at other avenues, or otherwise shut my mouth, I suppose.
Well, I always try to think outside the box here. It seems to me like someone in our political camp needs to open up their own venue, their own club or something. Or, I mean, you don't have to open a club per se. You could just rent a space for, like almost like what raves were, where you would kind of, meet this Friday at X location, and do the thing. But, your ads would have to have some kind of pro-European graphics on it. It's something that you would put on your Synthicide page, on Bandcamp, etc., and just signal it. Let people know that this is this kind of music with this kind of sort of political outlook. I don't know if that will. Yeah. The idea being that just like online, we have to create our own platforms. So offline or in IRL, we need to create our own platforms as well, I would assume. So that actually brings me to my other question. On the in the White Art Collective, we've been chatting amongst ourselves, asking, how can we mainstream the White Art Collective? How can we mainstream sort of white cultural arts more? And I don't know. I would like to know. Have you had any thoughts on that?
Well, it doesn't help that everyone keeps getting shut down from. Not that YouTube's everything, but it kind of is the MTV of today.
Well said.
Music.
Well said.
Sorry?
Yeah, I said well said. Yes, correct. Sorry.
I got deleted there a few months ago, so I started another page. Obviously, Jack White got taken down. I kind of knew he would with his song titles. I thought, might want to be kept there, and it sort of taught me a lesson too. Just from now on, I'll try not to be too edgy and sort of fashy, even though I like being like that.
Well, you know, I
To
mean,
some extent,
I get it. We've been working within limitations, and my personal view is I see what people are calling the splinter net. You know, where there's a splinter internet where you know, and I mean, of course, there's Gab, Minds, D Live, et cetera, et cetera. And I just think there's just we're just going to migrate over there. There's you know that's there. It's already established. It's a safe space. It seems so far. A lot of these places are safe spaces, and we'll see how it goes. I get it. You know, yeah, you want to be on the bigger channels or platforms, but I feel like you know, how far do we have to go? Like, how much do we have to compromise? It seems like after a while, it's like it just gets super frustrating, you know.
yeah. Look, so if we look, I went to after getting turf from Facebook. Yes, I went to Minds. Did very well there actually. And same with Gab, you know, BitChute, and obviously we all know that we're just going to be left alone there in our own little cordoned off part of the splinter. Splinter, that's good. But and you know, and really, it's not a place where normies congregate.
Yeah.
Yet, but you know, there's still plenty of common ground that we can appeal to with you know, MAGA guys and all that jazz. It's just not that I sort of. I don't need to overtly tone down anything really, but I mean, look, YouTube really didn't like that song I did with No White Guilt. That's the thing that got my channel tanked.
Oh, really?
I don't really understand why, but as soon as I made a lyric video for it, where it was, you know, you could read the lyrics and get the gist of the song, they took offense to it.
Yeah.
No warnings, just terminated the channel, and I made a bunch of appeals, and finally actually got back my final answer about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and it was just an outright no. So I literally sent back the most nasty, poisonous reply.
Right. There's no negotiating with those people. I mean, in a sense, we're all just flying under the radar until they find us. You know, I don't see any other way. You know how they are. But so as far as the topic though of mainstreaming our music, our culture, our cause, you know, I guess the first thing that comes to mind is kind of like the low-lying fruit. You know, like we would want to appeal to people kind of just right of us, and more towards the center. You know, I'm thinking like the QAnon crowd. The Richard Spencer was just on Alex Jones. Surprisingly, I was. Yeah, because right, I thought it was awesome, and then afterwards, okay, so Jones was, he was a little aggressive, confrontational with Spencer, and kind of dropping like references to Hitler and just dumb stuff like that, and whatever, people can go look it up and stuff, but later friends of mine in real life that are kind of MAGA types and into Alex Jones, they came to me like, hey, wow, my God, did you see this? And they don't realize that I'm freaking 100 steps ahead of them on stuff, and I just graciously say, oh wow, cool, and I thought, wow, they're being Spencer pilled, and it can be done. It can be done, And obviously Spencer is, he's a giant on the scene. And unfortunately, people on the right, they look to left-wing media to learn about what's right and wrong on the right wing. It's completely foolish. I mean, why would you wouldn't want me to ask your enemy to, tell me about Synthicide. Well, why would I ask your enemy that? Why don't I ask you that, right? So I feel like, with Spencer going on Jones's show, InfoWars, that gave the kind of normie right or the middle right, I don't know what to call that, the MAGA types, etc., a chance to actually hear his message, our message, however much he overlaps with all that and represents that. And it can be done. So, go ahead.
Yeah, no, he handled it absolutely expertly, and yeah, I mean, obviously we all knew that Alex would drop a few little things like that in references to Hitler, etc. But Spencer just brushed them off, easily. And clearly Jones, you could tell, liked the guy at the end of the day.
Yeah. And he did some kind of I don't know, like an afterthought video, which was just him. And he kept talking about, whites are targeted for replacement, and he kept kind of harping on that topic. I couldn't believe my ears. It's people in his political spectrum, they need to understand that it's not either or, it's not, we have to save America from socialism and the New World Order, and that's opposite of saving white people. That's absurd. We are at the center of that topic. The West comes from us. It comes from the European diaspora, right? So when whites are gone, then where's the West going to go? So it looks like I might have lost you here. So regarding the ideas of mainstreaming White Art Collective, our music, our arts, culture, into, say, normie right-wing Republican culture, one of the ideas that we've been talking about on Twitter is the idea of kind of making it more about nationalism. White nationalism, just the term itself, I think is kind of, I don't know, it's like, the boogeyman to everybody else in the right. They don't want to be associated with it. So it's a tricky thing. I think maybe we want to come forward more with the culture. But if you had a white festival, oh boy, call call in the troops. There's something. So I'm kind of feeling like, why don't we start there? Why don't we start there and just move out from there? I don't know. Do these ideas make any sense?
Oh, of course, yeah, completely. I just, there's obviously there's ways to have pro-European sort of festivals, I guess, but then how do you boil it down to white European or make a distinction without turning people off?
It's like white is a 4-letter word. It's disturbing to me, but frankly, from their perspective, that's kind of how they see it. So I suppose the linguistics are everything. They're already under the spell of the left. You know what I mean? They're kind of hypnotized or brainwashed by all. The left is all about linguistics. They,
can we start European instead, or but that might present.
I'm liking that idea. I mean, what's wrong with European? I don't see anything. It's weird because when you think of white, you automatically you have to think of what's black and white, or all the phrases that the left has tagged onto it: white supremacist, white nationalist, white this, white that. They've just unfortunately kind of stained the word in some sense. So moving it forward, from maybe that, or maybe not even really talking about that. It could be more about more abstract topics like, socialism and versus liberty, and I don't know, I think this is an important discussion for us to have, though,
Yeah.
But in that
Definitely.
In that regard, it's almost like maybe we should even be making music and art for the MAGA audience. What do you, is that a crazy idea?
No, definitely not. I mean, I know that over the last sort of year or two, at some point I started using a Sonnengrad quite often with my name and the Black Sun or whatever. And there was a guy that I really like, another synthwave outrun guy called Action Jackson, and I talked about collabing with him, and because I know that he made himself known as being a MAGA guy on Facebook, and of course copped a lot of shit from people.
Right.
So we started talking after that, but then he goes to me one day, I can't collab with you, and you know why.
Wow.
And I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, you use the Black Sun. I'm like, oh, you're kidding me. And so it made me sort of take a step back. And then something also Jason said in some recent, No White Guilt shows, it's just a matter of, I do have to be, as much as I love sort of poking and pushing the limits and going to the extremes, with imagery and being fashy and edging, all that kind of crap. I know at some point that I've got to, if I want to be palatable, I have to kind of make it that way, and maybe just refrain from using certain imagery that already drums up bad connotations with a lot of people.
So this is interesting because I think I have a kind of a parallel story, and I wanted to comment on the Sonnengrad itself. Okay, so I'm with a very, very close friend who's very, very sympathetic and understands the truth about white genocide, white identity politics, but at the same time is kind of rooted more in the Trumposphere or the MAGA sphere, if you will. And he's quite open-minded and goodwill, all that stuff. But he's a guy like the rest of us, and so he's kind of triggered a bit by things like the Sonnengrad, and he kind of, I guess I don't want to say called me out, or sort of was kind of testing me on the topic, because he says, "Oh, I saw you posted that on social media," and he was kind of looking for a reaction, like a defensive reaction from me or something, and I was aware, of that. I'm aware of how people misperceive it, or the kind of, the stigma that's attached to it. And I tried to talk about it, but at the time it was so uncomfortable that I sort of choked a bit on it, and I couldn't really get out what I wanted to say. So later I sent him an email, and I basically said that, listen, the indigenous symbols of Europeans are our symbols, and the ADL and the SPLC does not have the right to kind of, redefine them and then put them on a hate watch list and then sell it back to us that, oh, your indigenous cultural symbols are evil. That is one of the most insidious and evil and demoralizing strategies of the left. And
disgusting.
I refuse to see. That's the whole thing. It's kind of like martial arts. If somebody throws a punch at you, is it a feint? Is it a jab? Is it meant to, where are they? They're kind of testing your reactions in a way. And I feel that this is an example of that. So I did some research on the history of the symbol. I'm not I guess I'm not an expert on it, but anybody can look up the history of these things. And I understand it almost more as a kind of I guess an occult symbol. And occult, again, is that's almost like that's a word that was really created more by, say, the Catholic Church, of like forbidden knowledge. Don't go over there, and that doesn't mean that you can't go and learn what it means. And so, the point I'm just trying to get back to is that I think we need to reclaim our symbols, our indigenous European symbols, and just say, no, I'm not gonna follow the dance that you're doing here. I'm standing up for myself. Tough to do, and definitely not a great marketing approach as far as like trying to reach out to MAGA people, traditional conservatives, So yeah.
No, I mean, I agree. I shouldn't cuck on the issue at all. But I figure, if I wanted to make more inroads, I should hold Synthicide to a certain level. And then if I want to go edgier or fashier, well, then I might think about using a different name or a different identity.
Yeah, because honestly, I mean, we want more of that, like I think. And beyond that, it's not about us. It's about you. Like, your creative growth shouldn't be stunted or limited by these things. That for people like us, people in the White Art Collective, we're acutely aware of this. And it's an issue. I don't know how to say it, but I guess we have to watch where we step. We have to think about what we say, and it takes a great deal of courage to say the things that we say and do the things we do. So I'm not kind of patting us on the back, but I do mean it, right? I mean, the idea of like Jurius being taken off of YouTube and things you've experienced. We've all experienced some level of censorship because of white identity. So it's definitely a thing. So I'm looking at your Synthicide Bandcamp synthesidemusic.bandcamp.com. Please go check it out now or later or sooner. The sooner the better. It's awesome. There's a lot of variety here, it seems. Can you discuss these different EPs here and what's going on? First thing you've got Gold Coast. What kind of music is that?
Okay, so Gold Coast is it's still synthwave, but it's the brighter. I mean, it's called Gold Coast literally because of the Australian Gold Coast, which is up in Queensland. It's one of my favourite destinations. It's kind of like probably similar to Florida, I guess you would say, in climate.
Okay, right.
Yeah, and I've been going there ever since I was a kid, like from the 80s and onwards, and it just holds a special place.
Lovely.
In my climate-wise, surf beaches, it's a beach vibe. So that whole EP is dedicated to that lifestyle and that frame of mind completely.
Cool.
So it's not dark at all. It's melancholic in parts, but bright and summery, and driving your car and cruise down the alongside the beach coastal highway, or I've named each track kind of signifying a different activity that one might do on the Gold Coast.
It's interesting that you said that it's melancholic or has a bit of melancholy. I was listening to it earlier, and man, that describes it beautifully. I would almost sit as
definitely.
Something romantic about it to an extent. I don't know. Is that a fair thing to say, or am I crazy?
Very much so. Yeah, definitely definitely romantic yearning in there for the better time.
Lovely. Okay, so the other one you've got is Auto Oblivion. Am I saying that correctly?
Audio Oblivion.
Audio Oblivion.
I initially, that was christened before Synthicide, when I was still predominantly doing bass, from drum and bass to dub, neuro, all that kind of sound. So it's. Yeah.
I'm sorry, is any of that political, or is it more just strictly drum and bass?
Not really. No, I wouldn't say political.
Okay. I love drum and bass, so it'd be really neat if we had some cool drum and bass, white nationalist music.
Yeah, there was there's maybe like some anti-war sentiments on the first EP.
Cool, very cool.
With like industrial dub complex is to do with the campaign of drone bombings during the Obama era, but that's about as far as I go with it. But it's all on the heavy. Actually, not all of it, but some of it goes the extremely heavy end of drum and bass and dubstep, and some of it is jungly.
Nice. I freaking love jungle music, man. See, that's what I'm talking about. I mean, I don't know when, but maybe you could be the guy that kind of brings that back, but within the White Art Collective, through that lens or channel. I think that could be pretty neat. Yeah, maybe we should collaborate on that too.
Definitely. Another guy that just popped up in our sphere called Hammer Snipe or Modernity Leave is on that tip as well. Is in the bass kind of area.
Sweet. So, I gotta get up on this Ableton business, man.
Definitely. If you've got the full version. What version of Ableton have you got?
I don't want to bore the listeners too much on that. We'll talk about that later. But I'm going to focus on your music a little bit. So Audio Oblivion, you've got two there. Synthicide, we listened to Outrun the Modern World a little bit. There's another one here, Explorers. What's that EP about?
That is literally just dedicated to man's desire to travel intergalactically.
I love the cover. That kind of sci-fi future, retro future art's beautiful. And then, of course, Strange Love, A Passion for Fashion, synthwave tribute to Depeche Mode. That's got to get that to Richard Spencer immediately. So
that was I put that out myself. That was actually on the back burner for pretty much since the synthwave online scene coalesced into something. Initially, a Depeche Mode tribute album was one of the first things that people wanted to do, and because of rights and having to, maybe pay for rights, that's why I put it out as a free download, or it should be free anyway. And it's got a lot of guys from the initial synthwave scene, doing versions.
Well,
Now, cover versions, of course, they're rarely better than the originals, but some come close and some do some interesting takes.
interesting.
So grab it when you can.
Okay, so after that we have 2019, After the Fall of Civilization. Sounds kind of dark, my friend.
That was the first. Technically, that's the first EP, but that's a remixed version of it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's very soundtrack. You might notice a lot of my songs begin with a very lengthy intro where you just think you're listening to a soundtrack, but then slowly but surely the beat starts kicking in and it turns into an all-out kind of outrun dance track.
That was actually one of my earlier questions that I didn't really get to, was about your process and your, how you compose the song. Do you?
Yeah, that's.
Go ahead. Oh, okay. So my question, in a sense, was like, I suppose, since you're thinking of movies and soundtracks and this, clearly there must be some kind of a narrative approach. Am I right?
Yes, exactly, totally.
Yeah.
Obviously, a lot of producers put out synthwave albums as the soundtrack for a movie that's never been, and that's kind of what my 2019 thing was all about. And obviously, Australia is quite synonymous with post-apocalyptic themes, obviously from the Mad Max
I know.
series.
I just caught some of that on I don't know, on cable, and just thinking. I remember when it came out. It's sort of, I was, God, I don't know how old I was, a little kid or something, and it scared the hell out of me. I was like, the future, in Australia, Mel Gibson. Oh my God. And anyway, and you have to look at movies from the perspective of its time period too. But yeah, it's pretty neat. I guess maybe that must have had some kind of influence on you. Do you think you could get Mel Gibson to sing on it?
Oh, jeez, I'd love to get some spoken word from him. But
that'd be awesome.
Another movie to try and look for is Turkey Shoot. Came out in the early 80s, and it's.
I'll have to look that up. I don't think I know that one.
That's the one. It's more on the gore end of things. It's about a futuristic prison camp where if you get a chance to be free, but to do this, you are basically hunted live by the prison guards, and if they capture you, then they kill you. But if you can escape, you escape. But it's pretty good.
So was this made in Australia as well?
Yeah,
okay.
By the guy that's did a few exploitation films during that era, handful of them anyway. But it's pretty good.
So you got a couple more here. There's Survival. It's got kind of like I forget the name of that. It's like a nuclear warning sign, whatever that's called.
That's the second EP.
Okay, Just Dance. Can you help me out here? Italian?
Yeah, so there's a few. Down the bottom there's a few just single releases. That's a remix. Obviously, it's an Italo disco remix of Lady Gaga's first single. And there's another one that's kind of like a straight out aerobics kind of style.
I love that. It's so funny. It's cool. Yeah.
With Tracy Lords on vocals.
Wow. Holy moly. So why don't you suggest something for us of your discography here? Something from Golden Coast or Explorers?
Okay, from Gold Coast.
Yeah.
I would go straight to the first track. It's
Gold Coast is the name of the track, or is it? Currumbin Valley Hiking.
Yeah, that's very pretty, and it's literally just about being in nature, and
lovely.
It's images of waterfalls and forests and all that jazz.
Beautiful. Synthicide, Currumbin Valley Hiking. Let's play it.
Dream on.
Very sweet. This reminds me of some music that I'm into. There's a guy named, the band guy name it's called Neon Indian.
Yeah,
Are you
he's
familiar with
great.
his work? He's got a song called Deadbeat Summer. He does lyrics and yada yada, but it's just, I don't know. I guess I don't know how to describe the feeling, but it just really does feel very dreamy. It takes
Yeah.
you to another place. It's quite nice.
I've been waiting for him to tour out here, but he hasn't in years. So yeah.
Mm. Also, are you familiar with Com Trues?
Of course, yeah, he's toured here a couple of times, and sadly I've missed both, which yeah, it's very dumb of me.
Oh
But
my
no,
God, those you gotta up your game there, brother. Okay, so what's the next track we want to do here? We're gonna go into audio oblivion, and we're gonna do some bass, some hard cranking bass here. Let's see what we got. Bad Brain Dub, Creeper, Dawes, Future Has Passed. Which one do you like?
off that EP, we just go with probably a little bit of maybe just if you want to play a little bit of Future Has Passed.
Future Has
Like I
Passed.
said,
Okay,
maybe
let's
just
hook
want-
it up. We're gonna hook it up right now.
When we are successful, we have a real chance at this new world. Global depression.
That is sick. Good stuff, man. I am gonna pop on another song. It's called Oblivio. Checking out all kinds of cool stuff here. Let's check it out. Very nice, very nice. That was Oblivio by Synthicide. That is on Songs in the Key of Bass. Okay, next up is a song off of Synthicide's EP called Survival. This song is called Propaganda. Damn, that's good. Ooh, hot stuff. So let's listen to something off of Synthicide's EP called Audio Oblivion. This tune here is called Jungle-faced Jake. You guys have to check him out on Bandcamp. Let me just cool down from that here. Hey, I want to thank my buddy from Australia for coming out today. We had a couple little technical issues that we got over, but great conversation. I would love to have you back on the show. So thanks so much for joining me, bud.
Thank you so much for having me, Donald, and thanks again to the White Art Collective for putting me on your radar.
Wonderful, wonderful. There's so much more to come here. So keep Synthicide in your target there, guys. Okay, have a great night. God bless everyone.
Good night.
This is the American Zarathustra Show on Radio Intel, a platform for the White Art Collective, featuring commentary and interviews with figures on the dissident right and advocates for Western civilization and white well-being, discussing art, music, history, culture, philosophy, and spirituality. Join us each week to explore the cultural frontier of white identity politics. For more content and products, visit AmericanZarathustra.com. Remember, the higher we soar, the smaller we appear to those who cannot fly.